Tangled up in blue. Tangled up in blue. Tangled up in blue. Hi, welcome back to Guitar Discoveries. Today we're going to explore another open tuning, this time open E. Why does open E matter? We did open D before. What's different about open D? Stick around and let's find out. So there are lots of alternative open tunings out there. Open E is an interesting one, and one of the reasons why it's interesting is that it really sounds exactly like playing the E position chord that we're all used to in standard tuning, you know, when you put your fingers in this kind of configuration. One good thing about open E is that almost every guitar is capable of being tuned to this without causing too much strain on the neck. I mean, you are technically adding stress to the neck because you're tuning 3 of the strings up, but generally it's not so much that you're going to have an issue. And also that means that the string gauge that you've got currently on your guitar will probably work pretty well for it. The way to tune to open E is to think about what you're doing when you play an E chord down here. Basically, your A string is going up to a B. It's played as the 2nd fret, right? So tune the A string up to B. So that sounds like that. Then you're going to tune your D string up to E, because that's what you're doing there. And that sounds like that. Then you're going to tune your G string up to G sharp. And then you're going to end up with this beautiful open E chord. Okay, so that's just got depth. Now you might say, well, open D is actually that same thing tuned down a whole step. Isn't that even more depth? Yeah, technically it is, but there's something that our ears are familiar with the key of E. That's the sound, right? So I love the key of E so much that when I was recording my rock album Get This back in the 90s, I was obsessed with the key of E at that time, and I was doing all kinds of things like playing E with no thirds. A song called Price of Admission that used that kind of a vibe. Had a song called Wizard that was in E, had one 10,000 Flowers, a beautiful ballad that's in E. I did a blistering version of Neil Diamond's Holly Holy, also in E. So there were a lot of tunes on that record that were in E. I didn't use open E tuning for that. And now I kind of wish I had, at least for guitar solos and things like that, because there's something you can do in open tunings, especially when you're playing with a slide. It's been inspiring to a whole lot of songwriters and musicians down through the years. And for example, let's talk a little bit about the diversity of what open E tuning is and sounds like. Joe Walsh, Rocky Mountain Way. Look, ma, no hands. Open E is what allows Joe to play those amazing slide runs. I don't have a slide on me here, but because the guitar is tuned to a chord, it allows him to. Those 6 are right across from each other, and that allows him to slide. So that works really well. Keith Richards, Jumpin' Jack Flash. Sympathy for the Devil, Gimme Shelter. It's that the. So the crazy thing is that song is really strongly in a D flat. But because they drop and then they do the open E breaks, you end up with a really sinister sound, all based on major chords, brought to you courtesy of open E. In fact, almost the entire Beggar's Banquet album in 1968 was written in open E. No matter what key the songs ended up in, they were written in E. The same is true for Bob Dylan. He loved open E, and when he had his 1975 sort of comeback album, Blood on the Tracks, again, that was an album inspired by open E. Every song on it was written in open E, even though some of them were re-recorded in standard tuning before the album came out. So the most famous song from Blood on the Tracks is Tangled Up in Blue. The interesting thing is, until fairly recently, you couldn't really hear what it sounded like when Bob originally wrote it in the key of E. Well, there's a bootleg album. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It's called More Blood, More Tracks, the bootleg series, Volume 14. This is how prolific Bob Dylan is and was. Volume 14 has a version of Tangled Up in Blue, the original version written in the key of E, where you hear these chords at the beginning. So I thought it might be kind of fun to illustrate how open E sounds, for me to take a little bit of a hybrid between his original version of the song and the ultimate version of the song that got released. I'm not going to sing all the verses, it would be too long, but I will sing a few just to kind of give you the flavor. This is kind of me helping you see what I think makes open E really special. Early one morning the sun was shining. I was laying in bed, wondering if she'd changed at all, if her hair was still red. Her folks, they said our lives together, they sure were gonna be rough. But they didn't like Mama's homemade dress, and Papa's bankbook wasn't big enough. I was standing on the side of the road, rain falling on my shoes, heading out for the East Coast. Lord knows I paid some dues getting through. Tangled up in blue. She was married when we first met, soon to be divorced. I helped her out of a jam, I guess, but I used a little too much force. We drove that car as far as we could, abandoned it out west, split up on a dark, sad night, and agreed that it was best. She turned around to look at me as I was walking away. I heard her say over my shoulder, we'll meet again someday on the avenue. Tangled up in blue. I had a job in the great North Woods, working for a cook as a spell. I never did like it all that much, and one day the axe just fell. So I drifted down to New Orleans, lucky to be employed, working for a while on a fishing boat right outside of Delacroix. All the while I was alone, the past was close behind. I seen a lot of women, but she never escaped my mind, and I just grew tangled up in blue. She was working at a topless place. I stepped in for a beer, just kept looking at the side of her face in the spotlight so clear. Later on, when the crowd thinned out, I was just about to do the same. She was standing there in back of my chair, said to me, "Don't I know your name?" I muttered something under my breath. She studied the lines on my face. I must admit I felt a little uneasy when she bent down to tie the laces of my shoe. Tangled up in blue. Tangled up in blue. Tangled up in blue. So that is open E tuning, little hybrid of Bob Dylan, the original Tangled Up in Blue, and the version he put on the album, but done in the key of E, so you can really hear how open E sounds. So go over to Blood on the Tracks and you can hear some of these songs that were written in open E that they kept in open E. One of the most prominent ones is Shelter from the Storm. This is one of those 3-chord songs. Typical Bob Dylan, there's really no chorus per se other than the words, "Come in," she said, "I'll give you shelter from the storm." That is the chorus, and it's the last line of every verse. So I don't know how many verses that song had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 verses, right? Typical of what Bob Dylan was doing at that point in time. But here's that whole song is these 3 chords. And then that gave him the ability to do those pull-offs. 'Twas in another lifetime, won a toil of blood, when blackness was a virtue, the road was full of mud. Came in from the wilderness, a creature void of form. "Come in," she said, "I'll give you shelter from the storm." That's all there is to it. Thanks for joining me on Guitar Discoveries today. Please go over to guitardiscoveries.com. All my videos are posted there, and at the bottom of the page you'll find links to my music on Spotify, Apple Music, etc. You can go check out the Get This album with all those songs that were inspired by the key of E. And I hope you'll check that out. Also, please subscribe here. Click the bell to get notified when my new videos come out. I try to do them every week. This is just for fun. So, hey, I don't always get to it, but I really try. I want to share these tips, insights, lifelong stuff that I've picked up along the way. Thanks. See you soon.